Beneath the twin moons of the alien world, the colony square had become a stage of humiliation. The soldier was dragged forward, his wrists bound with burning restraints that bit into his flesh, every step heavy with exhaustion and defiance. The alien overlords stood above, their tall, insectal forms gleaming with armor that shimmered under the starlight. They spoke in their clicking, guttural tongue, words that needed no translation. He is defiant. He must be broken. He must be erased. The colonists were forced to gather and watch. Mothers clutched their children. Fathers stood with jaws clenched, but no one dared to move. To resist meant death. To protest meant the lash. So they stood in silence as the soldier, half-starved and beaten, lifted his head. His eyes were swollen, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, but there was no fear in him. Only that dangerous thing the aliens feared most: hope. "You think burying me will silence us?" he rasped, voice hoarse yet sharp as iron. "We are not ashes yet. Humanity does not die in the dirt." The lead alien hissed, striking him across the face with the butt of a spear, splitting his lip open. The crowd flinched but said nothing. The punishment had been chosen carefully. Not death by blade, not fire, not execution before their eyes. No, something crueler. The soldier would be buried alive beneath the sands outside the colony, condemned to suffocate and rot, his body hidden yet his suffering whispered through every stone and every wind gust. It was meant as a warning. Defiance ends in silence, in the earth, in nothingness. Dragged beyond the colony's edge, the soldier was thrown to his knees in a pit dug hastily by alien servitors. The sand was cold at first, chilling his skin through his torn uniform. He could smell the sharp mineral scent, the faint metallic tang of blood still dripping from his wounds. The aliens worked with eerie precision, their movements efficient, methodical. They had done this before, too many times. A colonist, forced at spear point, shoveled the first mound of sand over him. The soldier met the man's eyes. He saw shame there, tears threatening. He wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that survival under tyranny demanded terrible choices, but no words came. The next mound of sand hit his chest, and then his legs. His lungs tightened, breath coming faster as the soil pressed against him. The moons above blurred in his vision. They buried him slowly, deliberately. The sand filled around his ribs, up to his shoulders, until his arms were pinned. The weight grew unbearable, every breath shallow and ragged. When it reached his throat, he gasped violently, sand slipping into his mouth. He coughed, choked, fought to breathe, but more sand cascaded down. In a last moment before his face was covered, his eyes lifted to the night sky. He did not see stars. He saw her. Not truly, just a flash of memory. A woman's face, soft in the chaos of his life. Someone he had once touched, or perhaps only dreamed of touching. He could not even place her name. But she was there, hovering in his mind like light on water. Then the darkness claimed him as the sand closed over his face. Silence. At first, he panicked. The crushing weight pressed on his chest, every instinct screaming for air. He thrashed as much as the earth would allow, a futile struggle that only wasted what little breath remained. His heart hammered wildly, each beat like a drum in the coffin of soil. Time dissolved. Seconds became endless. His lungs screamed, clawing for oxygen. He tasted blood where his lips split against grit. His body demanded surrender. But his mind, his cursed human mind, refused. He thought of the colony, of the people forced to watch him suffer, of children growing up under the yoke of monsters. He thought of Earth, distant, unreachable, perhaps already fallen. He thought of freedom, that word that still meant something even here. And then came the whisper. At first, he thought it was his own mind unraveling. A sound delicate as wind through dry grass. Then clearer, a woman's voice. Breathe. His eyes flew open in the suffocating dark. Impossible. His chest was locked, lungs caving. Yet the word pressed into him like warmth. You're not done. Her voice was not a hallucination of panic. It was calm, steady, intimate, as though lips brushed his ear. He tried to inhale, and somehow, through the sand, a flicker of air found him. Or was it not air, but something else? Energy tingled in his chest, a faint glow blooming beneath his ribs. The soldier lay paralyzed in disbelief, listening. The whisper was not only sound, it was touch, caress, breath mingled with his. Whoever she was, wherever she came from, she was inside the earth with him, refusing to let the silence take him. Pain still lanced his body, the sand still crushed him, but something within shifted. The weight was no longer only suffocation. It was cocoon, womb, prison, and rebirth all at once. He felt himself hovering between two worlds, one of death, cold and suffocating, and one of life, fragile and luminous. He thought he would fade, dissolve into nothing, yet the whisper anchored him. He remembered lips he had never kissed, hands that had never touched him, but whose presence felt inevitable. Fated. The soldier's last conscious thought, before the darkness finally swallowed him whole, was not of fear. It was of her voice, soft and defiant, promising him that death was not the end, that he had been buried not to be erased, but to rise. And in the stillness beneath the alien sands, though his heart slowed and his body went still, a faint ember glowed in the black. The desert was still, the twin moons casting pale light across the dunes like silver scars. Most colonists had returned to their shacks, terrified to speak of the execution they had been forced to watch. But not her. She had stood at the edge of the crowd, fists clenched so tightly her nails cut her palms. She had seen the soldier's face when they pushed him into the pit. She had heard his words before the sand swallowed him. Humanity does not die in the dirt. Those words clung to her, igniting something inside. She could not let him in like that. Not in silence. Not in the suffocating grip of alien cruelty. She waited until the guards withdrew, until the night grew heavy and only the hiss of the wind filled the colony. Then she slipped away, bare feet barely touching the ground, moving like a shadow toward the burial site. Every step was fire in her chest. She was not strong, not armed, not a soldier. But she was human, and something about his defiance had breathed into her as if he had given her his last strength. The pit was still there, a mound of freshly turned sand rising like a scar against the pale horizon. She dropped to her knees, hands clawing frantically at the soil. Her nails split, her fingers bled, but she dug and dug, whispering to herself, whispering to him, "You're not gone. You can't be gone. Not like this." The sand was heavy, choking her hands, clinging to her skin. She coughed, grit filling her throat, but she kept going. And then her nails struck something solid. Fabric, the edge of his uniform. With a cry, she clawed faster, clearing space around his chest, his face. He was pale, his lips blue, grains of sand clinging to his lashes. For a moment, her heart froze. He looked dead, too still, too cold. "No," she whispered, her hands trembling as she cradled his dirt-caked face. "No, you don't get to leave us. You don't get to leave me." She bent low, pressing her ear to his lips. Nothing. The night stretched long, merciless. But then she remembered the way he had spoken, the stubbornness in his voice, the way his eyes had burned when he defied the aliens. He was not meant to die like this. Her lips hovered above his, desperate, terrified. Breath wouldn't come, hers or his. And then, in wild defiance, she kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was a gasp of desperation, her mouth sealing over his, her breath pouring into him like fire. She forced air into his lungs, again and again, her chest heaving, tears streaking her face. Her kiss was not only air, it was demand, plea, command, "Come back. Don't let them take you." At first, nothing. He was still lifeless. Her tears wet his face, falling into the dirt between them. She pressed harder, her lips moving against his, almost angrily now, as though her passion alone could ignite his body. Her hands clutched his shoulders, fingers digging in, shaking him. And then, he jolted, his chest convulsed beneath her palms. A sound broke from his throat, ragged, broken but real. His eyes snapped open, glowing faintly with the same ember light he had felt beneath the sand. The kiss had become something else, not just breath, but spark. Life surged back into him. He gasped in her mouth, the air rushing in as if her very soul had ignited him. For a moment, neither of them moved, lips locked, their breath mingling in desperate, fiery rhythm. The world around them disappeared. No aliens, no colony, no pit of death. Only two broken souls, bound by the act of defiance that pulled him back from the edge. When she finally pulled back, panting, her forehead pressed to his. Her voice shook but was fierce. "I told you. You're not gone. You don't get to die when we still need you." His eyes, dim with exhaustion, focused on her. Recognition flickered. Not of her name, perhaps, but of something deeper. The voice he thought he'd heard beneath the sand, the whisper that had kept him alive, was hers. It had always been hers. "You." His voice cracked, barely sound at all. "You kissed me back. To life." She finished for him, tears still shining in her eyes. "And I'll do it again, as many times as it takes." The night wind carried the silence of the dunes, but for the first time, it felt alive. Somewhere in the distance, the aliens rested, unaware. But here, in the pit of death that had become a cradle of defiance, something had been reborn. He had been buried alive, but her kiss had broken the grave. Humanity, broken and chained, had found its fire again in the unlikeliest of places, in a woman's desperate lips against a soldier's fading mouth. And as she held him, trembling, still afraid, but unwilling to let go, he clung back weakly, whispering against her skin, "I'm not theirs. I'm yours." The air was still heavy with sand and silence, but his breath now came ragged and alive against her shoulder. She held him as if afraid he would slip back into the earth if she loosened her grip, her arms tight around his trembling frame. His body was cold at first, shock seeping into his bones, but beneath her hands a warmth began to grow. Not just ordinary human heat, but something stranger, something alive, humming like fire trapped under skin. He groaned, trying to sit up, but she pressed him gently back down, her palm against his chest. "Don't," she whispered. "You're too weak. Just breathe. Just stay with me." His eyes fluttered open, faintly glowing with that ember light she had glimpsed when she pulled him free. He studied her face, her dirt-streaked skin, her tear-swollen eyes, and the way her lips still trembled from the desperate kisses that had wrenched him back from death. "You did this," he rasped. His voice was broken, but behind it there was awe, disbelief. "I felt myself fading, but you pulled me back." Her throat tightened. She wanted to tell him it was madness, that she had simply given him air, but even she couldn't deny what had happened. It had been more than breath. She had felt it, something passing between them, something alive. "You weren't ready to die," she said firmly, brushing the grit from his face with trembling fingers. "So I refused to let you." His chest rose, a shaky laugh breaking out, though it quickly turned into a cough. She bent closer, supporting him, her arms steady around his back. And in that closeness, in the hush of the night, she realized how intensely she felt his warmth now. It pulsed against her skin like a second heartbeat, quickening every time her hand lingered on him. He felt it too. His gaze flicked from her eyes to her mouth and back again, lingering. For a soldier, he was unarmored now, not just in his broken body, but in the raw way he looked at her, as if her very presence kept him alive. "I should be dead," he whispered, his hand lifting slowly, hesitantly, as if it weighed 100 stones. His fingers brushed her wrist. Even that small touch sent a shiver through them both. "But when you touched me, when you kissed me, it was like the fire came back." She swallowed hard, her heart pounding. "Then maybe you're meant to burn," she said softly, unable to look away from him. "And maybe I'm meant to hold the flame." The words hung between them, dangerous and undeniable. He searched her eyes, as if making sure she understood the weight of what she'd said. Then, with what little strength he had, he leaned into her, his forehead pressing against hers. Every inch of him radiated that strange heat now, a fragile but growing blaze. She could feel it sinking into her, lighting something deep in her chest. She had saved his life, but he was kindling something inside her too, something that frightened her almost as much as it thrilled her. Her hand slid to his neck, steadying him as his breathing slowed. His lips were so close, cracked, but still burning faintly with that inner fire. He didn't kiss her, not yet. It was enough just to feel their breaths mingling, to know the world outside could fall to ash and it wouldn't matter, as long as this closeness remained. But when his hand drifted upward, fingertips brushing the line of her jaw, it broke whatever fragile barriers still stood between them. She tilted her head, and their mouths met again. This kiss wasn't desperate like the first. It wasn't life against death. It was life choosing life, desire born from defiance. His lips were unsteady, his strength wavering, but the fire inside him responded to her, growing steadier with every heartbeat they shared. She clung to him, tasting grit and heat and something dangerously intoxicating. When they finally broke apart, both panting, she whispered against his mouth, "You're alive because of me, but I'm alive because of this." He let out a shuddering laugh, pulling her closer despite his weakness. "Then we keep each other alive, no matter what comes." The night wind carried the distant hum of alien patrols, but neither of them moved away. His body was shattered, his veins glowing faintly beneath the skin, her arms around him like a shield. They should have been afraid. They should have been planning escape. But instead, they lingered in that fragile, burning moment where survival and desire were the same thing. Every brush of her hand over his chest steadied him. Every touch of his lips to hers fed the spark in both their veins. They were defying the grave, defying the aliens, defying even the silence of the desert by simply choosing to want each other. For the first time since his execution, he smiled, faint, crooked, but real. "They buried me," he murmured, voice rough but laced with fire. "But you kissed me back, not just to life, to something more." She pressed her forehead to his, whispering fiercely, "Then let's burn together." And beneath the moons, in the pit where death had been written, two humans clung to each other, not as savior and saved, but as two souls who refused to let go, their bond already hotter than any flame the aliens could imagine. The night pressed heavy on the desert, the air thick with silence except for the distant hum of alien patrol craft. She gripped his arm as they ran, his body still weak, though every step seemed powered by something unnatural now. His skin radiated faint heat, as though life and death had carved a fire inside him. Each time she stumbled, his hand steadied her, rough and strong despite the tremor in his limbs. They couldn't stop, not with the colony sand still unsettled, not with the memory of shovels covering his body alive. The aliens knew he had risen. They would not forgive such defiance. They reached a ravine, shadows stretching long across the broken stone. He pulled her into the hollow of an abandoned shelter, pressing her back against the wall. His breathing was ragged, his chest heaving, his face inches from hers. She felt the heat of him, not just warmth of skin, but a dangerous glow, as though the energy inside him wanted to burn its way free. "They're close," she whispered. His jaw tightened. "Let them come." She laid a hand against his chest, feeling the fever of his pulse. "No, if they find you now, they'll tear you apart again. We need to live together." The word hung between them, together. His gaze fell to her lips, and the air thickened. For a heartbeat, she forgot the danger, forgot the alien drones sweeping the skies. All she felt was his breath brushing hers, the fragile line between death and desire. The sound of engines roared above. He pushed her deeper into the shelter, their bodies pressed close, her back against cold stone, his body shielding hers. Every muscle in him was rigid with restraint, but she felt the tremor, part fear, part longing. "They won't stop hunting me," he murmured. His lips brushed her ear, making her shiver. "You've tied your life to a dead man walking." "Not dead," she whispered back, tilting her face toward his. "Not while I'm here." Their mouths met, not gentle but desperate, mouths hungry, as if the kiss itself defied the grave. His hands trembled as they cupped her face, then slid down, pulling her closer, as though he needed to feel every part of her alive against him. She clung to him, the kiss deepening until fear melted into fire. A beam of light swept across the ravine, and he broke away, his forehead pressed to hers, his breath hot against her lips. They were both shaking, not only from fear of discovery, but from the raw electricity that surged between them. "Move," he said hoarsely. They slipped from the shelter, darting between rocks, his arm always guiding her. But every brush of skin lingered. Every time his hand caught hers, it was like a brand of heat. Survival demanded speed, but the unspoken pull between them slowed their breaths, made each glance last too long. By dawn, they collapsed in the ruins of an old water station, hidden beneath twisted steel and stone. She slumped against a wall, exhaustion pulling at her, but when he lowered beside her, she leaned into him without hesitation. His arm wrapped around her, protective, hesitant, then holding tighter as if he feared she might vanish. "I felt it," he said after a long silence. "When you kissed me that first time, not just life coming back, something more, like you pulled me out of the grave with more than air." Her fingers trailed along his wrist, feeling the warmth under his skin. "Maybe love is stronger than death." He gave a harsh, almost broken laugh. "I don't know what love is anymore. All I know is I can't stop wanting you." She turned, meeting his eyes. In them burned that strange fire, dangerous, alien, yet wholly human. Slowly she leaned in, her lips brushing his, soft at first, then deeper, hungrier. He met her kiss with a force that stole her breath, pulling her in his lap, their bodies tangling as though the world outside didn't exist. Her hands roamed over his chest, tracing the scars that mapped his survival, while his fingers slid along her waist, gripping her as if afraid to let go. Each kiss was a gasp of rebellion, each touch a vow that they would not surrender. Their bodies pressed tight, hearts racing, heat rising with a ferocity that bordered on unbearable. But then voices outside, alien clicks and hisses. Patrols. They froze, chests pressed together, breaths locked. He held her tighter, shielding her with his body as shadows passed across the ruins. She could feel his heart pounding against hers, both from fear and from the fire that still smoldered between them. Minutes stretched into hours, or so it felt, until the voices faded and silence returned. Only then did they dare breathe. She buried her face against his neck, kissing the skin there softly, tenderly. He exhaled, shaky, one hand threading through her hair. "Every second with you feels stolen," he whispered. "Then steal more," she answered, her lips brushing his collarbone. The sun rose higher, and with it, the colony stirred, unaware of what had unfolded in the ruins beyond. But for them, time was marked not by the hunt outside, but by the heat that bound them together. Fragile, dangerous, unstoppable. They were hunted lovers now, bound by more than survival. Bound by the kiss that had dragged him from death, and the fire that would not let either of them go. The betrayal came at dawn. They had found brief shelter in the husk of a ruined granary, the air thick with dust and old grain, their bodies pressed together beneath tattered blankets. For a moment, the world had seemed quiet, safe. But safety was a lie in a colony ruled by fear. Boots crashed against stone, voices shouted, and the wall burst inward. He reached for her, but rough hands seized him before he could rise. She screamed, fighting with nails and fists, but a rifle struck her down, leaving her gasping on the floor as they dragged him into the light. It wasn't the aliens who had found them. Not yet. It was their own, human collaborators, cowards who had traded loyalty for survival. One stepped forward, a scarred man with the insignia of the colony guard still clinging to his jacket. His smile was thin and cruel. "You should have stayed dead," the betrayer sneered, striking the soldier across the face. Blood sprayed his lips, metallic and hot. "The aliens want to see what makes you different, and I'll be the one they thank for delivering you." Chains bit into his wrists and ankles. Heavy irons dragged from alien forges. They hauled him through the streets as if parading a beast, the colony watching with wide eyes but silent mouths. No one dared step forward, not even a spit. Fear held him frozen. She stumbled after them, her face pale but fierce. A guard shoved her back, but still she followed, her voice breaking through the silence. "Cowards! Traitors. He's human, ours. And you're handing him to the ones who slaughtered us. The betrayer turned on her with a sneer. Better to kneel than to die screaming. He'll learn that soon. The soldier said nothing. Pain burned in his ribs where boots had struck. Blood filled his mouth. But he kept his eyes on her. Every step away was a knife in his chest. But he memorized her face, the fury in her eyes, the trembling in her hands. He would not let despair erase that image. They dragged him into the old processing hall, now twisted into a chamber of torment. Rusted beams hung heavy with chains, the floor dark with stains no one dared name. They bound him upright, arms spread, his head forced down by iron weight. The betrayer circled him like a jackal, every strike of the whip carving pain across his back. Each lash was meant not just to break his body, but to shred his defiance. He bit back every cry, his jaw locked until blood trickled from between his teeth. You're not human anymore, the betrayer spat. You should have rotted in the sand where we left you. You're nothing but a curse, and when they take you apart, we'll all be safer. The soldier lifted his head, eyes blazing with that unnatural fire. Better a curse than a coward. The whip struck harder, but even agony couldn't erase the ember in his gaze. That night, when the hall was silent except for his ragged breathing, she came. Bruised, bloodied from her own fights, but still she came. Slipping through shadows, she found him chained, his body broken and his head bowed. For a moment, her heart stopped. He looked lifeless, his skin pale beneath the flicker of alien lamps. She touched his cheek, her fingers trembling. "Don't you dare leave me," she whispered. "Not after everything." His eyes flickered open, dull with pain, but alive. "You should have run." "I won't," she said fiercely, pressing her forehead to his. "I don't care what they do. I'm yours. Even here, even like this." Her lips found his, desperate, defiant, pouring every shred of strength into the kiss. He groaned against her mouth, not from pain, but from the flood of feeling, the anchor her touch became in the storm of despair. For a moment, the chains didn't matter. The whip marks, the bruises, the iron dragging him down, none of it mattered. There was only her mouth, her breath, her love pressing fire into his veins where pain had ruled. Her hands traced his chest, tender over torn skin, steady where he shook. "Feel me," she whispered. "Feel that you're still human, still mine." Tears stung his eyes, hot and furious. "They'll kill you if they find you here." "Then let them try," she breathed, kissing him again, slower this time, deeper. Her lips trailed down his neck, her hands pressing against his heart. Every touch defied the chains. Every kiss told him he was more than his torment. He was hers. In that broken hall, surrounded by shadows and iron, they clung to each other as though their love itself could shatter steel. And maybe it could, for in the fire of her kiss, he felt the chains tremble. The first tremors began in silence. At first he thought it was the lingering pain of the whip, the fire of torn flesh refusing to fade. But then the glow started, faint, pulsing beneath his skin like molten veins. The chains rattled with every shiver, and the betrayer's mocking laughter still echoed in his mind. It wasn't their cruelty that terrified him most. It was himself. His body wasn't his anymore. His death in the sand, the grave that had swallowed him, had not left him unchanged. He felt something deep inside, something alien, ancient, stirring awake. Each breath was edged with heat, his blood like wildfire, his bones trembling as if the air itself vibrated with power. He tried to suppress it, but the fire only roared louder. The walls around him seemed to bend, lights flickering as if drawn into his heartbeat. He thought of her, the woman who had dug him from the earth, kissed life back into his lungs. For a moment, even the fire bent toward that memory. Then she came. The door creaked open, a shadow slipping into the chamber. Her figure was lit by the sickly glow of alien lamps, but to him, she was brighter than the sun. She rushed forward, hands trembling as she touched his scorched skin. "You're burning," she whispered. "I can't stop it," he rasped, his voice shaking. "Something changed when they buried me. I'm not just human anymore." Her eyes searched his, wide with fear, but refusing to look away. then you're more than they'll ever understand. The chains rattled as his body convulsed again, light spilling from beneath his skin, dancing along the iron shackles. He tried to pull away. Get back. I'll hurt you. But she pressed herself closer, chest against his, lips brushing his ear. You won't. You can't. Don't you see? The fire listens to me. He froze. And it was true. The wild heat that had raged uncontrolled just moments ago seemed to pause, like a beast caught between fury and recognition. Where her hands pressed to his chest, the energy stilled, flowing into her touch instead of tearing outward. Her lips met his again, not a desperate kiss this time, but a deliberate one. Slow, grounding, like pouring water on a flame. His body shuddered, the light inside him flickering but softening. Their mouths lingered, breaths mingling, and he felt the inferno inside bend toward her like gravity. Visions tore through his mind in the aftershock of that kiss. He saw himself beneath the sand, buried in silence, his lungs filled with earth. He should have been gone, yet the soil had burned with alien residue, remnants of long-forgotten experiments. Something in his blood had answered it, something that wasn't fully human. He pulled back, eyes blazing brighter now. I'm not who I was. That grave, it made me something else. Then I'll love what you've become, she whispered fiercely. I don't care if you're fire and ash or something between worlds. You're mine. The chains groaned under the pressure of his rising heat. Sparks hissed from the iron. He trembled, terrified that if he let go, he would explode, a living bomb that would consume her too. But her hands slid across his face, down his chest, anchoring him. Don't fight it alone, she said. Let me hold it with you. Their lips collided again, harder this time, fire meeting breath. He gasped in her mouth as her touch drew the energy into rhythm, slowing the frantic pulses until they beat in time with her heartbeat. Every kiss pulled him back from the brink. Every touch shaped the fire instead of letting it run wild. His body glowed against hers, heat radiating so strong it should have seared her skin. But she didn't pull away. She pressed closer, their bodies molding together as if she were made to withstand the flame. Her breath came heavy, her own pulse racing with a heat of its own. Not fear, but desire, a hunger that matched his. The chains that bound him rattled louder, not from his struggling, but from the sheer force building inside. Their passion wasn't just flesh and blood anymore. It was cosmic, energy surging between them as though the universe itself recognized their union. She whispered against his lips, voice trembling with both longing and certainty. You're not burning me. You're making me alive. His head fell back, a groan torn from deep inside as he surrendered. The fire poured out, not in destruction, but in release, wrapping around them in streams of light. It should have been the end, yet with her against him, it was rebirth. Their bodies pressed tighter, breaths ragged, the chains straining with every heartbeat. He felt himself breaking apart and remade all at once, his humanity fusing with something greater. And always she was there, mouth to his, skin against fire, anchoring him through the storm. When the blaze subsided, the hall was scorched, the air thick with smoke. His chains lay half-melted, glowing orange from the heat. He sagged forward, her arms around him, both of them trembling from the intensity of what had passed between them. Her forehead rested against his. Do you feel it? She whispered. Yes, he breathed, his voice raw. You're the only thing keeping me whole. The truth burned brighter than the fire itself. He had been reborn in that grave, something alien twisting into his soul. But it wasn't the alien power that gave him control. It was her. Her lips, her hands, her love. She wasn't just his anchor. She was his reason. And in that moment, with the fire inside him still glowing through his veins, he knew the aliens had not created their greatest weapon. Together, he and she had become it. The night sky over the colony was never truly dark. Alien patrol ships glided in endless orbits, their engines humming like predators circling prey. The people had grown used to that sound, the reminder that they were watched, chained, broken. But tonight the hum trembled. The stars themselves seemed to flicker as a new rhythm echoed across the sky. It was not alien. It was human. The moment his chains had melted under the blaze of his own rebirth, the fire within him refused to hide. He stood in the ruins of his prison, his body trembling with light, veins glowing like rivers of molten gold. And beside him, her hand wrapped tight around his, steadying him as if her touch alone could tame the storm. "Look at them," she whispered, her voice sharp with fury as she gazed out through the shattered walls at the alien city looming beyond. "They thought they buried you. They thought they buried us all." Her words struck him deeper than the flames ever could. He lifted his head, and for the first time since his execution, he did not feel like prey. He felt like fire. "Then let's show them what they created," he said, his voice a growl that carried the weight of burning resolve. They moved together, slipping through the shadows of the compound. The first alien guards never had a chance. With a sweep of his hand, the air shimmered, and fire leapt from his palm, searing their weapons into molten slag. She struck fast, blade flashing, finishing what his flames began. The two of them fought like one. Her speed, his fire, her cunning, his fury. By the time the alarms blared, half the compound was already in chaos. The colonists, long beaten and silenced, saw the fire blazing in the night and felt something stir in their chests, something they hadn't felt in years. Hope. Whispers carried through the streets. "He lives. The buried one lives. And he burns with the flame of defiance." Then the whispers became shouts. Then shouts became war cries. It spread like fire leaping from dry grass. From house to house, hand to hand, the colony rose. Weapons hidden under floorboards were pulled free. Old grudges burst into violence, and the sound of alien dominance cracked under the roar of human rebellion. He and she moved at the center of it all. Wherever he went, his fire painted the sky in violent arcs, a living storm that the aliens could not contain. She was his anchor, his shield, his blade, moving through smoke and blood with him as if she had always belonged at his side. When he faltered, her hand steadied him. When he doubted, her kiss reignited him. Their bond was more than flesh. It was the spark that lit the uprising itself. Alien reinforcements descended, ships streaking down with burning engines, their weapons trained on the rebelling colony. The crowd quailed, until he stepped into the open square, her hand still locked in his. The ships opened fire. He raised his arms. The energy inside him roared, spilling out in a wave of white flame. The blast struck and dissolved in midair, devoured by the fire that wrapped around him like a living shield. He screamed, a raw sound of fury and rebirth, and the shield became a spear. The colony gasped as the sky itself burned. Alien ships ignited one by one, their hulls cracking open as if the fire had crawled inside their engines. The air filled with falling debris, streaks of light scattering like stars torn from their places. She clung to him, her voice fierce even as her eyes shone with awe. "You're not their weapon," she said. "You're our flame." And for the first time, he believed it. The aliens on the ground scrambled, their discipline crumbling as they faced something they could not understand. A man who had been buried alive, risen from the earth, and now wielded fire that burned their empire to ash. But it wasn't just him. It was her. When his strength wavered, she pressed her lips to his, steadying his fire with her breath. When his control faltered, she guided his hands, shaping destruction into precision. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they were legend being written in real time. By dawn, the colony was no longer silent. The streets, once lined with fear, rang with victory cries. The aliens' banners smoldered, their ships wrecked across the horizon. And in the square where it had all begun, he stood with her in his arms, his fire glowing faint but steady now, her body pressed to his as if she alone kept him tethered to the ground. The colonists gathered around them, faces alight with awe and devotion. They did not see a broken soldier or a girl reckless enough to defy execution. They saw a new beginning. One of the elders stepped forward, his voice shaking as he spoke. You are the fire they could not extinguish. You are proof that humanity will not be buried." The soldier looked down at her, his fire reflected in her eyes, and whispered so only she could hear. "No, we are." Her lips curved in a fierce, proud smile. She kissed him in front of them all, unafraid, their passion not hidden but blazing for every soul to see. And the colony cheered, their voices rising as high as the flames still licking the sky. It was not the end of war. The aliens would return. Their empire would not forgive this rebellion. But tonight, humanity had shown it could not be erased. Tonight, a buried soldier and the woman who kissed him back to life had lit a fire that would never be put out. And as they stood together, the colony's banners rising behind them, the fire within him pulsing steady at last, he knew one truth more powerful than any weapon. He was alive not because of the grave, not because of the fire, but because of her. And with her beside him, he would burn the sky itself before he let humanity fall again. The battlefield was quiet now, littered with smoke and smoldering ruins of alien ships, their sleek forms broken and burning against the sky they once owned. The uprising had swept like wildfire, fueled by the spark of two souls who refused to break, and now silence lingered where screams and gunfire had roared. He stood at the center of it all, his chest rising and falling with unnatural steadiness, eyes glowing faintly with the strange fire that had taken root inside him since his resurrection. His veins pulsed with energy that wasn't entirely human anymore, something vast and unnameable, something he did not fully understand. The others whispered when they saw him, some in awe, some in fear, but he looked only at her, the woman who had held him when his body was shattered, who had touched him back from the brink of death, who had kissed fire into his veins. She came to him now, moving slowly through the smoke, her hair tangled, her face streaked with blood and ash, but her eyes unwavering. He thought she might hesitate, that she might flinch at the glow in his skin, the tremor in the air that bent around him, as though reality itself feared his steps. But she didn't. She touched his cheek with the same tenderness as before, the same warmth that had always made him believe he was still human. "You're still mine," she whispered, as though daring the universe to deny it. He leaned into her palm, eyes closing for a moment, because her voice anchored him more than any strength or power surging inside him. "I don't know what I am anymore," he confessed, his voice rough, cracked with the weight of the truth. "But I know what I feel when I'm with you." She smiled faintly, her lips trembling as tears streaked down her soot-stained cheeks. "Then that's all that matters. The rest, let them call you monster or savior. I'll call you the man who came back for me." He kissed her then, not desperate this time, not burning with the edge of death or the fever of survival, but slow and deep, sealing a vow neither had spoken aloud. Around them, whispers grew, the colonists gathering to watch, to bear witness to the moment when myth became flesh, when a broken man and a defiant woman carved a legend into the ashes of their world. His arms tightened around her, feeling the truth of her heartbeat pressed to his chest, steady and strong, grounding the unstable currents raging inside him. Without her, he knew he might unravel, dissolve into the power that wanted to claim him. With her, he was whole, human, even if his body said otherwise. Time seemed to fold in that embrace. He remembered the grave, the cold earth closing over him, the moment life was ripped away. He remembered the pain of awakening in her arms, her tears hot against his skin as she pulled him back to breath. He remembered the first kiss that felt like a rebellion, the first touch that defied death itself. And now, standing in the dawn of victory, he understood it had never been just survival. It had been love all along, raw and unshakable, a fire strong enough to rewrite fate. He pulled back slightly, searching her eyes. "They'll tell stories about this day," he said softly, almost in disbelief. "They'll say humanity rose because of power, because of revolt. But I know the truth. It started with you. With us." She shook her head, brushing her thumb along his lips, silencing him. "No. They'll tell stories about you, the man they tried to erase, the man they buried, and how he returned, not just alive, but burning brighter than ever." Her lips curved, fierce and tender at once. and I'll be the one who remembers what really saved you." He laughed then, a sound choked with both sorrow and joy, before pulling her into him once more, holding her like the world itself might fall apart if he let go. The flames around them dimmed, the smoke thinning into the pale light of a new morning. Humanity would rebuild. The colony would heal. And though he no longer belonged fully to the race that birthed him, he belonged entirely to her. That truth was enough. As the sun broke over the horizon, they kissed one final time, slow and eternal, the world falling away until there was nothing but the fire between them. He had been buried to be erased, to be forgotten. But her kiss had made him eternal. And humanity, scarred, broken, but unyielding, would never forget.